Disclaimer: the following video will contain spoilers. In the hopes of having a friend, Lilo, Maya Kealoha, adopts a mysterious blue dog that would change her life forever. Named Stitch, Chris Sanders, a troublemaker who would put Lilo's life in danger because he is being hunted by Jumba, Zach Galifianakis, and Pleakly, Billy Magnuson, would come to learn the meaning of Ohana. Disney has a record of ruining beloved animated movies and their messages when remaking them as live-action adaptations. Lilo and Stitch is no different. While the meaning of Ohana is arguably present in the remake, the story was drastically changed, where instead of emphasizing the theme the movie is based on, it disregards it, while retaining that message. In the end, these characters learn nothing from the journey and thus butcher part of what makes the animated movie so dear. As a result, Lilo and Stitch 2025 failed in these three fields. 1. Characters. 2. Substance. And 3. Story/theme. Let's begin. The domino effect. Before the movie came out, it was revealed that Gantu wouldn't be in it. For various reasons, I did not like that choice. While not being in the movie for long, he had an integral part in the story. He helped Stitch come to his senses, understand the meaning of Ohana, and not leave Lilo behind. Whatever their excuse might be for not including him, this change created a domino effect that affected both the stories and the characters. The first domino that fell created the assassination of Jumbo's character.
I prefer deranged genius, but thank you for the introduction.
Dr. Jumba Jukiba.
First off, it was a shame that his voice didn't sound alien-like or have an accent. While I wouldn't have minded it sounding different from the animated movie, I didn't expect it to sound so human. This change completely removed Jumbo's personality that we've known from the animated movie. Despite the movie's unique spin on his character, I could not care for Jumbo at all. Instead, we get a very basic character that lacks any sort of personality. Therefore, Jumbo as a whole entered the uncanny valley.
You're not authorized to touch that.
Why? Does it eject you from the ship? That would be nice.
Sure, when he disguised himself as a human, it was better, but it took away from the story. I'll explain later. Feeling shallow, empty, and uncanny, this character became one of the movie's pitfalls.
You know, I'm right so often, I don't even enjoy it anymore. The novelty has completely worn off.
The dialogue also didn't help much, but that's a separate issue. But nothing can be worse than making him the sole antagonist of the movie. This removed his character arc from the original, which made him such a good character. His confusion on seeing Stitch change from this so-called programming is what makes Jumba change. All of this adds substance to the movie, and not present in the remake removes part of what makes this story good. Instead, he was forced to be an uncanny, two-dimensional antagonist with no redeemable qualities, despite being voiced and acted by Zach Galifianakis. And yes, you're right, he was an antagonist in the animated movie. What I'm referring to is how he remained the antagonist at the end of the remake, instead of having his character arc come into play. The second domino that fell was a result of changing Jumbo's character. Their solution of mashing two characters into one completely deters the pacing, theme, and story of the movie. But let's put a pin on this and talk about this in the third section. All in all, this domino effect jarbled the movie around to the point where the theme gets lost. Sure, it had its moments, and some changes weren't altogether bad, but overall, it created a mess that talking about each one would make this review long. Moving on to Nani's character assassination. Nani, Sydney Agudong, is trying to be both a mother and a sister to Lilo, but sadly, she cannot balance both lifestyles. With a sister who gets into trouble and is picked on, Nani cannot find the right words. Struggling to comfort her and be there for her while also working to financially support her has Nani stressing over what to do. This crushing weight of responsibility is what propels her character. She wants to be there for Lilo, not only because she's family, but because she's at risk of being taken away. As a result, she takes it upon herself to not accept her acceptance to UC San Diego to be there for Lilo. Before I continue, going to college was a detail I actually liked in this movie. It added more nuance to Nani's character, but unfortunately, it was full of bad writing, which butchered the story on account of this detail. But more on this later. For now, let's take a look at 3 scenes to discuss how Nani's character was butchered. After Jumba and Pleakly fail to capture Stitch while surfing, Lilo is taken to the hospital. Not having insurance, Miss Kekoa, Tia Carrere, apologies if I butchered that, informs Nani that the state can pay for the medical bill if Nani relinquishes guardianship of Lilo. Meaning, she had a choice to give up Lilo or remain together. The whole premise of the movie is seeing Nani overcome her obstacles in order to keep custody of Lilo. But if she is given a choice, the choice she makes reveals her character. And what choice does she make? She chooses to relinquish custody of Lilo, all because she cannot pay for the hospital bill, among various other reasons, yes. This tiny detail changes everything about Nani, because the whole story is about her not wanting CPS to take Lilo away. At least in the animated movie, she lost and was going to lose Lilo without being given a choice. But in the remake, she has a choice? I understand not being able to pay the hospital bill, but if that's all it took, it's a shock it didn't happen sooner. The second scene I want to talk about is Stitch's adoption scene. When Stitch crash lands on Earth, Lilo mistakes it for a falling star. She kicks Nani out of her room so she can make a wish. Nani overheard this wish, but in the animated movie, Nani feels remorse and empathy for Lilo and allows Lilo to adopt a dog, hoping it would be the answer she was looking for. But in the live action adaptation, after the wedding crash scene, the disguise scene, Lilo asks the neighbor Tutu, Amy Hill, if she can go to the animal shelter. It is also not explicitly said that Lilo adopts Stitch, or at the very least doesn't coincide with what was said or why Lilo went to the animal shelter to begin with. Because as stated in the movie, she wanted to go to see the dogs and feed them candy.
Tutu, can I go into the animal shelter? Please, please, please. Nani left me. Hi, AJ.
Okay, but you know you can't feed the dogs candy again, right? You know, we do have better dogs, like way better.
Not better than him.
The difference between iterations changes Nani's actions of overhearing Lilo's wish. On the one hand, Nani shows compassion and despite her struggles, decides to allow Lilo to adopt a dog. And on the other hand, it removes this characteristic from Nani. It goes nowhere. Why is this important, you ask? Well, I liked how it was Nani's actions that moved the story forward instead of reacting to Stitch being a part of the problem. Second, it helps build Nani's character because it shows how she's trying to be a good sister. Otherwise, what was the point of her overhearing Lilo's wish if it's going to go nowhere? It doesn't make any sense on removing this important detail from Nani's character. The last scene is when Lilo shows off Stitch's ability to play vinyls. In the animated movie, Nani is awoken abruptly but pays attention to Lilo. She's confused by it, and it's funny. But in the remake, she pays no attention to Lilo. Perhaps she's being responsible and paying bills or looking into Lilo's health insurance, but this small scene doesn't really help me like Nani. And it's because of how she ignored Lilo. How can the movie claim that Nani wants to be there for Lilo if she's not willing to pay attention to her? I understand that there's responsibilities that adults need to do, like get her health insurance, which I'm assuming she was doing here, but this tiny detail just completely ruins Nani's character because it goes against her character. As for David's character was also changed a bit. From wanting to help Nani and even finding her a job position, he became a babbling fool in the live action adaptation, with no real purpose of being there, even removing one important set of dialogue that helps the story. I'll talk about this in the next section. In terms of Lilo's character, I will be talking about it throughout my review. But first, I do have to talk about the movie's lack of substance. A fragmented story. Part of the reason I feel this movie feels fragmented or incomplete is because of all the changes they implemented that affected the pacing and story. Although some changes were interesting, these changes ultimately hurt the movie because of the constant shift between the old and the new script. Like a game of tug of war, these two stories were battling with each other. To explain what I mean, I'll give a few examples. Removing 4 minutes from the introduction in the remake, the lack of substance hurts Jumba's character portrayal. Not only does this also create a jarring, fast-paced mess, but as I've stated before, alters Jumba's personality. In the animated movie, we get a little bit more context and exposition with Jumba's character. We understand who he is and what he wants. Adding a bit of charm into the mix, despite his actions, we've come to like this character. In the remake, however, his consistent self-praise of being a genius became irritating. The dialogue was not good, and the pacing of the movie did not allow us to follow this character adequately. I do understand they probably brushed it off because he's the antagonist and they wanted to get on with the story of Lilo and Nani, but even though the character is an antagonist, the audience still has to care for this character, because without an antagonist or conflict, there really is no story. And if I don't care for the character, then I don't care for the story. Removing the doll scene was also bad, because this small scene shows Lilo unable to make friends. She wants somebody to play with, but gets shut down every time. She even had to make her own doll because, as stated in the animated movie, they don't have a lot of toys. And how could they? Lilo isn't able to have these things anymore because Nani is struggling. Omitting this scene only makes Lilo appear like a troublemaker for the story's sake, and not one with a history. It does not depict a little girl being misunderstood or being treated differently. The remake depicts her as a child who does bad things and gets away with them. As a result, when she says everybody treats me differently in the bonding scene, these words don't hold any weight. Part of the reason is that we don't see how differently she is treated. Sure, she stirs the pot and wanders into private property, but all this shows is her bad character, not people treating her differently. The only instance in which we do see that is when the girls criticize Lilo's friendship bracelet, and Myrtle, Emery Hucano Brio, apologies if I butchered that, tells Lilo these bracelets only work if she has friends. This leads to Lilo pushing her off the stage. Now, while this scene is in the animated movie, the scene alone doesn't amount to Lilo's words having weight and depth to them as they did in the animated movie, where it came from the heart. Not only with how these girls treat Lilo, but the words Nani expressed towards Lilo, something that was also undermined in the remake. And little tiny details like that are scattered throughout the movie. The bonding scene also had another set of dialogue in which Lilo says something that I didn't feel the weight to. It's as if she's reading and following a script rather than allowing her words to come from the heart. And no, I am not referring to her acting. The words are, "I like you better as a sister than a mom." In the animated movie, she said this because of Nani's words from their argument earlier, where it was implied that Nani would love a rabbit more than Lilo. These words hurt her and caused her to ask Nani about it, showing character with both of these sisters. But in the remake, when Lilo said those same words, she said it out of sarcasm, as if it was a joke. It does not hit as hard as in the animated movie because they made it a joke.
That one means time for bed.
I like you better as a sister than a mom.
And yes, obviously they also didn't include the rabbit bit in the remake, which shows what I'm trying to discuss here. Lastly, the one sentence that was removed from David's character was crucial in Stitch's story and character arc.
You know, I really believed they had a chance. Then you came along.
But then you came along. This was crucial because it was what caused Stitch to see his actions put Lilo in this situation. He broke this family. And so he decides to leave to not cause any further pain. And the small scene where Lilo said, "Everybody leaves, but I'll remember," was also a scene I wished were in the remake. These tender, heartfelt moment scenes were nowhere in the remake. But alas, this remake lacked any substance. It lacked substance because it was too focused on two separate script ideas. But by removing the last sentence, it wasn't as strong an impact towards Stitch as it was in the animated movie, where these words circle back around after Stitch realizes he is part of their Ohana and goes to rescue Lilo. But unfortunately, the remake also twists this around, where Lilo saves Stitch and not the other way around, removing that reflection and epiphany from Stitch. Granted, there is a cool scene where Stitch does rescue Lilo, but when you put it all together, it's still bad writing. All in all, if I want to talk about every instance in this movie, this video would probably be an hour long. So I will leave it at that. I understand that if the movie was a shot-for-shot remake, it wouldn't be good either. But when you remove dialogue or scenes that help make the story good, then you're stuck with a movie with bad writing. What you want to do is add on to the story, figure out what made the animated good, keep what makes it shine, and emphasize it more, not create the feeling that the story lacks in more places than one. What was the point then? As we all know, movies are not only for entertainment. They hold many themes and messages that can resonate with us. The journey enforces said themes and messages. But when the journey in the movie doesn't enforce the themes, or the ending doesn't coincide with the story, then you're left confused, calling the movie bad. In Lilo and Stitch, those themes and messages are doing good, family, love, and redemption. And yes, Ohana is also part of it. To keep things simple, there are two scenarios I want to discuss: Stitch's redemption and guardianship over Lilo. Adding to what I said about Stitch's arc, I was also not fond of them removing the ugly duckling scenes. Like I mentioned before, it takes away part of Stitch's arc, but it also takes away from Jumba's arc. Jumba talks to Pleakly and in proxy us, the audience, on his curiosity about how Stitch must be feeling, because when his sole purpose of destruction is not able to be performed and with no memories to look back to at night, Jumba is unsure what Stitch is going through. So as he sees his change, it makes him change. Lilo then tells Stitch part of the story of the ugly duckling that sticks to Stitch, because he knows where he belongs. Stitch doesn't know that yet, and we visually see that through these scenes. It also helps emphasize how Stitch was only using Lilo as a shield. I know it was present in the remake, but when Lilo forgives Stitch in less than 5 seconds and goes on to rescue him, it didn't really make any of what Stitch did matter.
The only reason you picked her at that animal shelter was for your own protection.
Is that true, Stitch?
If you care about this little girl at all, you'll leave her here.
What was the point in including this dialogue if 5 seconds later he's forgiven? So honestly, removing the scenes doesn't make any sense to me. As for Nani giving up guardianship over Lilo at the end, yes, Ohana is technically still represented in the end. Yes, they are still capable of growing up together. Yes, Lilo will have a good home. But let me ask you this. If this was supposed to be the outcome, how come Tutu didn't suggest it sooner? The character Tutu only serves as a plot device. Not only was she enabling Nani's separation from Lilo, granted, she wanted Nani to go to school, which is good, but by not offering to take care of Lilo, then at the end, when she does take Lilo, it feels like the character of Tutu was only written for that happy ending to exist and nothing more. She doesn't offer it just so the story can happen. The problem is by the end of it, the story doesn't matter, because Nani still gave up Lilo at the end. Yes, the ending is all sunshines and rainbows, but it completely defeats the purpose of the movie. It completely ruins what the movie was about. What is the point of jumping these hurdles if at the end you're going to give up? And I'm starting to think that in the remake they spun the theme around so that it would fit the narrative. Unfortunately, they still dug themselves in a deeper hole, and as a result, was left with bad writing. And while I'm at it, let's talk about that college subplot. It confused me because it's not like UC San Diego is the only option. Couldn't Nani go to college in Hawaii? Sure, it might not equate to going to UC San Diego, but given her situation, it's still a win-win. Tutu can look after Lilo like a babysitter until Nani comes home from classes. But the movie completely denies this option. There is also the option of Nani marrying David, but yeah, it has its problems. But the point I'm trying to make is that the movie paints this image where it's either UC San Diego or nothing. And that's wrong. In conclusion, I do like that Lilo and Stitch tried going a different route with their live action adaptation, adding some unique ideas or concepts like Jumba and Pleakly becoming human, to the skipping college for Lilo subplot. Unfortunately, the writing wasn't great, which made these interesting concepts in a way pointless. Therefore, a lot of these changes end up hurting the movie more than helping it. It feels like two competing stories fighting with each other, that in the end, you're left with a jarbled, themeless mess because scenes don't hold weight, characters' actions don't align with their character, and the theme is disregarded or altered to fit the narrative. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Did you enjoy the movie? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next review. Until then, God bless.